Yeah, that's better. I was doing some music yesterday and I had to turn the mic down while I was recording something else. Hey Noel, how you doing? What are you up to this week? Always strange when we get the crossover of people I know in real life and people I know on the internet. Hey Valentin. Hey Modulino. Hope you folks are doing good. Just having a bit of a fight with Streamlabs on my end. But hey, it's a Monday. There we go. Cool. Let me know what you folks have got planned for this week. Whether it's day job stuff or home stuff or dev stuff. Normally, when I do a Dirt World stream, I'd have a different surround for it instead of all of this stuff. I'm going to get rid of it today. But I haven't set up my new haven't set up everything to work with my new audio interface. So yeah, GitHub desktop. I find it so much easier to understand. My onboarding into using GitHub has not been fun. So what I'm going to do today, and this is something I was going to do anyway, but I figured I might as well do it on a stream. I haven't really, well, I've been doing things to Dirt World, but because I'm co-developing it now with Gleb has been spending a lot of time in the project doing a lot of menu work and basically stuff that's super quick for him that for me would take ages, and then when I'd done it, it would be not very good and he'd have to fix it. So he's been doing a lot of the menu work, and that means I have been doing some stuff, but it's mostly been like drawing offline in Procreate. I might put a video up about that sometime soon, just to kind of show people all the weird art workflows that go into this game. We are going to update Game Maker. But what I wanted to do this morning was just play the game a bunch, take notes as I'm playing, and then start to build a spreadsheet with our kind of feature, like a kind of feature request spreadsheet. Because we do have a Trello, but the Trello, and this is getting into really kind of dull project management stuff here, but some of you might find it helpful or interesting. So we've got the Trello, and the Trello moves left to right as they usually do, and we've got like an issue list, we've got ideas, and then the backlog is supposed to be stuff we've really kind of agreed to do, and then the to-do thing is the stuff we're currently doing, right? But the problem is the backlog ends up getting really long, the ideas list ends up getting really long. These three lists over here are a bit of a mess. So what I intend to start doing is making a separate spreadsheet that allows me to sort of record ideas and evaluate them, and then once we've worked out which ones are definitely good to go, then we'll put them into Trello. So I'm gonna set that up today, and I'm gonna start populating it with stuff. But we're just gonna make sure we've got the latest. Make sure we've got the latest version of the game, and I'm gonna just play it a bit and think out loud as I'm playing it. I'm gonna make a new spreadsheet that's called like make a backlog spreadsheet, and the idea will be we'll record the idea, the area that it covers, and this would be stuff like a new feature or first time user experience, which is like stuff to, tutorial stuff to teach the game the first time it's played. Quality of life, like improving an existing feature. And then what I will probably do, I don't know if I'll do this during this session, but I'll create some sort of scoring system for priority. Because what you can do, and I've seen, I used to work with a very good project manager who used to do this kind of stuff, is you can have like, you can have a sort of out of 5 score for a bunch of different things and then add them up or multiply them and then end up with a score which then tells you which things to prioritize, right? So what I would do here is like, I might have a score out of 5 for synergy. And what I mean by that is, does this new idea synergize with things that are already in the game and add sort of exponential value, right? Because sometimes you have an idea for a new feature or a new game object in your game world and it doesn't link to anything. And that could be good in its own right, but the thing that sort of links to and enriches other mechanics and objects in the game is probably a kind of higher return on investment of your time. So synergy is the score I would give for like, does this idea make other parts of the game stronger in terms of like giving the player an interesting experience? And then there might be some other kind of scores that I give things like, I don't know, like a thematic score for how well it fits the game, maybe like an intuitiveness score, although not everything in this game needs to be super intuitive because some of it is quite puzzly. Right. I've just updated Game Maker, so it's going to break on me now, of course. Don't need tvOS. We do need the YYC package. Spreadsheets. We love spreadsheets. The way you learn programming is just by starting with really, really simple things, and like you got to understand that the programming isn't hard. It's just you're often asking the computer to do too much at the get-go because you want to make a game rather than a toy that does a simple thing. And you will get faster as it goes along, but most people when they start out to learn game programming, their goal too early on is to make a game. And the things you'll be capable of making in your first year of learning game programming won't really be a game, or there'll be something as small as a Flappy Bird. And that's not like, I know that's disheartening, but that is just how long it takes to, because a game contains so much stuff to make it a game, right? And even if you can get like the core actions the player is doing in the game, I mean, an inventory system is not simple. That's the thing. So you say something like a simple inventory system. The games I was making for the first 2 or 3 years of using Game Maker would not have contained a inventory system for me, right? And that's because the types of things you need to do in order to make an inventory system are not interesting to me. So to give you an idea of like, this isn't really a programming stream, but I'll go into it now because we've got someone in the chat and it's helpful. What are the 2 components of an inventory system? One is the back end, right? Like the engine needs to understand that there are items that exist in this space, this theoretical space called the inventory, right? It could be a list, which is simpler, or it could be things on a grid, which is slightly more complex. You've got to program that. So you've got to program some sort of data structure that says this object is here, right? And have those references to those objects. And then you've also got to create the user-facing stuff of the interface, right? Which is either a list, simpler, or a grid, more complex. Those 2 things are reasonably large tasks. So what I would say is if you're at a stage where you're still asking sort of questions about how do people learn games programming, it's really hard, then an inventory system is not something you should have in one of those early projects. Play really simple indie games. Play Minute, play Downwell, simple action games. If you're more interested in interface heavy games like RPGs and stuff, then that's fine. But you know, the project I always tell people to learn first up if they're interested in that sort of game is like a virtual pet or something, because you're going to have to learn how to build interfaces and stuff like that in the system you're using. And yeah, everything you're talking, there's no such thing as a simple inventory system, is the way I would put it. Especially, there's definitely no such thing as a simple inventory system for a beginner to program. these things become simple the more experienced you are. But if I was trying to make an inventory system, because I don't do that kind of work very often, it would still take me weeks and weeks. And you know, I've been using this game engine since 2018 or something. Not consistently, but yeah. That's the challenge, is getting over the assumption that anything is simple, right? Because when you throw the word simple in there, it's like the word just. We use the word just to minimize how much. Oh, you should just do this. It's like, no, that's more work than a just thing. And that is the biggest hurdle to get over when you're early on learning games programming, is just understanding that if you break things down into all of their logical parts, which is something you have to do to program anything, things that seem simple because they're in so many games are not really that simple. And that's annoying to hear, but it's just true. And they become simpler the more you break them down. That's like part of what you have to do to learn programming, and it's one of the reasons why tutorial hell exists, is that tutorials often don't teach you how to break things down logically, and that's the main skill you need to be able to do to kind of convert the ideas in your head into code. Yeah, exactly. Valentin's exactly right. You're telling the computer what to do, and when the computer doesn't do what you expected, it's because you gave it the wrong instructions. So it's like, it's kind of like, imagine, I think I gave this example in a video before, but imagine you've gone to a country where you can speak like a little bit of their language, you can speak a little bit of French or Spanish. When you first get there, you're going to be asking to do really simple stuff. But most of the things required to make a game that really looks and feels like a game are not simple things in a programming language, right? So that's the sort of thing you'd be doing after you've been in the country for a few years. Okay, so what I'm doing in this session, really, I'm going to be playing the game, thinking out loud, and writing things down, and basically trying to model, trying to think not like someone who is working on the game. So I'm just going to think in terms of like what a player would request. And I already know some of these things because we've got feedback in the Discord, and I've actioned quite a lot of those already. And I'm going to just start making a list. And what I'm going to do is I've got a notepad here. So I'm going to be writing on the notepad as I play the game and then transferring it onto the spreadsheet later. Because every time I come out to modify the spreadsheet, I'm going to forget what I'm doing in the game. So one of the things I'm trying to do in this game as well is, so I'm going to I'm thinking about it anyway, so I might as well say it out loud. This castle area where you start the game in is going to be completely rebuilt. We've got some story stuff that's going to happen in here, and all of this art is going to be changed. This is pretty much placeholder still. But I don't really want to have to make an explicit tutorial for this game. I want to just have an area you can go into and mess about. So I'm thinking the castle might eventually have some sort of gymnasium that just has stuff that explains how to do certain things in the game, like maybe training dummies that talk to you, like the Hades training dummy and stuff like that. Yeah, the tiny text is because it hasn't been redone. So we can ignore all of the dialogue because it's kind of placeholder, but basically there's no proper dialogue system. I go near a character, it brings up a box. There is absolutely tiny text, like Const just said. And that is basically all of my first pass dialogue stuff, which is not how the dialogue will work in the full game. So there's a Game Maker plugin called Scribble that does really nice text where you can kind of highlight a specific word and stuff, and we're going to implement that in the next couple of months, and then the kind of characters and dialogue part of the game will become a bit more robust. But at the moment it's just there to, this was there for the first alpha. It also wasn't this small in the first alpha, it's just we've recently migrated the UI to being this HD thing, so you can see these like HD icons around here, which I know there's going to be pixel art purists that don't like the mixing of the hand-drawn stuff and the pixel art, but we've just been this project has been such a mess in terms of like how we've had to approach certain things, and a lot of that comes out of me not really understanding the engine or the conventions or anything. But one of the things that this is our kind of first pass at a new build menu that Gleb's been working on. It gives a slightly better sense of what's going on than before, because people didn't really understand. I think that one of the things that people have struggled with based on what we've seen in playtesting is people don't understand that these 3 choices are from a deck. They'd think it's just like pick a random thing, but it's actually like there is a deck of rooms. So we've been gradually working on making that more legible and making sure that this will eventually have a kind of card outline, so it's clearer that these are from a deck. And then we also have this discard and redraw mechanic that needs a new piece of art. This is what this new ink resource is for, so if I don't want any of these things I can replace them, and now I can't do it anymore because I've got no ink. Got a lot of sort of level design adjacent stuff I need to do in the game at the moment as well, because I'm planning to rebuild all of the rooms based on learnings that we've had so far. Oh, that was speedy, Gleb. I sent Gleb this graphic for this menu yesterday, and it's already in. Counterspell had a good question in the chat, but I honestly couldn't answer that better than Julian has, so I'm gonna just leave you with Julian's answer. I think that's a good idea with procedural stuff, though, is just to have, like, you can create a fake map that is just like, okay, in the procedural fire levels, this is what we want the end result to be like. Because the thing about procedural generation as well is you want biomes to have a feel to them, right? Otherwise it just becomes palette swaps, and there's no... Like, if you read the Spelunky book, you know, the ice caves have a different procedural generation algorithm to the jungle and so on. And that means that the player has to learn how to do the level differently for each of those different... I guess it's roughly a quarter of the game in Spelunky, each area. So yeah, having like a bespoke level that you make first, and then it's like, okay, what algorithm would achieve this type of level, you know? Hi, Speaker. I'm doing alright. We're doing our first week back to, like, full streaming nearly every day. Trying to get back into working on the game. So today it's really self-playtesting, taking notes, thinking about which things are working well in the game. The game will look slightly different. There's some of the kind of custom lighting stuff I did that looked really cool but was really slowing the game down, so it's currently off. We've still got that kind of flickery light around the torches, but there was some sort of more visibility based stuff, but it was just really expensive because I was doing lots of line of sight checking on a million different blocks and stuff. And there's still problems with the character controller that we will iron out in the next month or so. I'm kind of used to it enough that I can still play the game, but it doesn't feel good. But sometimes if you're sprinting and you jump, the coyote time doesn't factor in the sprint, and it doesn't carry the momentum from the sprint into the jump. It feels really bad. Destroyed safes contain 10 more treasure for every room you've built this run. Okay. We've been doing, we did public tests, well, I mean, the public test is still up. We did a public test started in December, got some people into the Discord, got some feedback. Some of it's already been actioned because it was simple stuff and just quick to fix. And some of it's more long-term stuff that's going to take a while. But yeah, there's already a public playtest that people can do. Definitely got some performance issues for some people. Gleb found an issue where the game wasn't using people's GPUs on some machines, on like hybrid machines, and we had to force it to use the GPUs, that was a fun one. People getting really annoyed because they got high-end machines and a 2D pixel art game isn't running very well on them. But some of that stuff we put fixes in for. Some of it will just have to come with later optimizations because we're not prematurely over optimizing things when we're still developing the game, the actual gameplay. I don't know about Mac version. Maybe further down the line. I mean, anything to do with porting or anything that's considerable work to get something onto another platform, it depends, but GameMaker should export to Mac, but I don't know if it's something we'd prioritize early on. Yeah, the coins make a mess, which means you do have a lot of busy work to run around and pick up the coins, but I think that creates a lot of little snap decisions. Fairies do more. I want the little fairies you collect to do more stuff. Currently you can use them to neutralize one of those turrets. If you collect a fairy, it follows you around for a while. It doesn't really do anything, and then if it sees an aggressive turret, it will fly into it and take it over, and then that turret can't hurt you anymore. I didn't do the music. So the music I did, that music in the castle. When you forfeit the run, he shatters. This music in the castle here is music that I did that I've just had in my library for ages. And I think this one's even on, like, I don't know, I have some music on Open Game Art that's been on there for ages. So I put this into the castle because I want the castle to be quite a miserable kind of place, because basically the story in this game that's going to be like the backstory and something you progress throughout the game is that you work for this evil wizard and he's sending you out on runs to kind of collect stuff for him, and he's not very nice, so every time you come back he'll have something horrible to say to you basically. So I want this kind of the castle that you come back to be kind of drab and unpleasant. It's going to eventually be this kind of brown, clunky, steampunk kind of castle, rather than just a bunch of blocks, which it currently is. So we've got this sort of like morbid Victorian music in there, and then the main game has a library of kind of really cool dungeon synthy type stuff. And this is just like a couple of people that I've met online who make this type of music, and I'm going to be like paying each person who's made some music for it a flat rate to use one of their tracks. There's a guy called Ed who is a dungeon synth musician and also a narrative designer who's helped me out a little bit with some of the narrative design, and he's also helped kind of he's kind of helping me find more people that make the same sort of music so that we can have like an ensemble soundtrack. So I'm trying to do what they did with Hotline Miami, which is to have a sort of a bunch of people from the same musical genre making a soundtrack together for the game so that it has a particular vibe. But we're doing that with dungeon synth instead of, you know, 80s bass music. Oh, get key, pop that in there. Oh, these guys are still broken, I think. I think these guys just chase you forever. And they're not supposed to. They're supposed to stop after a while. Whoa. So yeah, here's all the new menu stuff that Gleb has put in. I'll probably do a pass on typography and stuff, and maybe we'll put some sort of decorative border on these borders. But this is the Relic menu, so you can see there's stuff down here that I've never found on this save file. These are things that just the player hasn't found yet. Then these ones that are grayed out are things that you have seen before but you don't have on this run. And then the orange ones are the ones that are currently in your inventory, which are also down there at the bottom left. So when I'm in the main game, we can see which relics we've got at the bottom left, and you know, if you've played the game a bit, you'll know what they do, and that can help guide your gameplay. But if you don't know what they do, you can go into the menu and see. So the radar detector, a curious device tuned to point in the direction of the nearest moon rock. What's a moon rock? So that one's not very helpful. The toothsome key, building red rooms no longer consumes keys. So normally you spend a green key every time you open a door, but if you've got this relic, you can build as many red rooms as you want and they don't cost keys. And then that one gives you bonus coins for each relic collected if you complete the run. So we've got, I think that screen is probably the weirdest place in terms of the blending of the art styles, because there's a world where maybe I could redo these in the style of the surround so that this is all in the same style. But I think one of the reasons for trying to make it look like a computer was so that we could kind of justify it having an illustrated outside and then pixel art in the middle. It's all going to end up looking a bit janky, but I think as long as it sort of makes up for it in charm, as long as it's legible and makes up for it in charm, I think people would generally be all right with it. And I can't really, I mean, one thing I could do is like deliberately pixelate some of the hand-drawn art, but I'm not really sure I want to do that either. Maybe posterizing it so it looks like kind of retro 90s 3D stuff, but yeah, everything you see in that menu is like, that's been what Gleb has been working on for the last month or so. And I've got 2 voids in my deck. These are because the ghosty things touched me. So there's some deck manipulation where certain monsters will put things in your deck that aren't helpful. Oh, play silly games, get silly prizes. Make ink pick up. Make ink pick up, design ink related rooms relic. So the ink is a new mechanic that it's in there, but you just sort of start the run with 1 ink by default, and there's no way of actually collecting it yet, so. It's very, I mean, the way that the rooms are laid out, it's very, very unlikely that you can get hit by anything as soon as you open the room, because the monsters are usually in the center of the room. So because none of this is actually procedural, it's just like a block of content that you lay down. They're all sort of built so that there's never anything like right in your face as you open the door. The one that does happen sometimes is if you're impatient and you run straight in, then you can get hit by something, but I think that's okay for that to be a learnable thing. one of the balances with this type of game is like you need so many interactions to make it interesting, and it's hard to do that and make them all legible. So for example, the gnome does this mining for you. If you sort of max out the gnome shop and you sell him enough stuff that he shuts up shop, then he becomes a little miner and he runs around doing this for you. But it's not like super clear that he's doing that because the way he moves, and he just sort of switches to the pickaxe pose for a second. I guess it's okay as a first pass, but that's an example of the sort of thing that I would probably come back to later on and make it clearer what's happening. I think if players already understand what's happening, then they're going to be so happy with the utility of the thing they've just discovered that it doesn't really matter so much if it's not clear. But he also, he won't mine here, so he registers if there's a gap underneath the block with no facade in it. And then he uses that to sort of go, oh, there's no room beneath this, so I won't dig the gold out of the floor here. Although that would be quite funny. And I do often follow the rule of what would be the most funny thing to do here. And, oh, I need to read that. This thing down here that I'm standing on, this was something that players struggled with legibility, because when we zoom the camera out a bit further, people can't see the symbols on there. So redo fairy alters for legibility. I think, so someone just asked whether we would do the Dark Souls route collecting stuff. It's possibly something like it, but I think when you're doing something like this where there's already there's already too many things mashed together in this game. It's a conceptual mess. But one of the things that I try to do is, like, if I were to do a version of that, how would it tie into the deck building, right? So how would doing the equivalent of a corpse run tie into the fact that we can build rooms and manipulate the deck and stuff? So thinking to blueprints, which is where the room building comes from, I think the equivalent of a corpse run would be like, okay, you don't always drop your stuff, but maybe there's a way of banking some of it somewhere. You know, like there's a vault room or something, and you can put all of your relics in there, and then the next run when you build that room, you get them all back. You know, that would be cool. And then when you're finishing a run, you go, oh, I'll quickly go to that room and I'll put all my relics there. And then next run, I'll get them all back. That could be neat. But I'd sort of always want to go for things that help bridge the platforming and the deck building, because those are the two sort of central things in the game. So we're always trying to do stuff that adds value to both of those things. We've nearly exhausted all our rooms now. Sounded like he made a balloon sound when I punched him then, but it was... flowers need more uses. That's another thing. Yeah, I'll explain the deck again in a minute. Where's the level exit? I think this map isn't fully... okay. So it's like you have to... There's a weird technical restriction on the map, which is that it doesn't all draw unless you scroll around. I think we might be able to fix that by putting a vignette around it, so it sort of explains why you need to move the camera around. Right, I need to get over there to get out of the level, so I'm going back through that red room. Okay. Again, shout out to Gleb for the auto map. I died. Right, it's supposed to, you know, I think in terms of like difficulty and the difficulty of losing stuff, if you've played Noita, then I would put this game in the same category as that in terms of like the level of how hardcore it is in that element. And you can just have like a very relaxed game of this and just mess about, and it doesn't matter so much if you die. But yeah, the whole kind of losing things is really part of it. Seeing what people are saying in the chat. Yeah, the hole in the wall in Slay the Spire is a good example of the type of feature I'm talking about. So Blueprints has tomorrow cards, which have like a little clock on them, and they're things that affect the next run. And I would like us to get something like that into this eventually. Yeah, so someone pointed out about the no mining diagonally. That would be something that we'll fix later on as well. I think he would need to like, basically, if he mines a gold block and there's a dirt block between him and the gold block, he should destroy the dirt block at the same time. I think that's the easy fix for that. I'm going to note that down now because that's actually quite an easy one. Annoying diagonal mining. Someone said the jar smashing seems repetitive. It does, but I mean, there's something you need. You need to have a repetitive action in a game so that you can have an efficiency upgrade to the repetitive action. I had this experience the other day of like playing through the tutorial of Factorio, and it's really interesting because if you've only watched people play Factorio like deep into the game, you think it's just all the automation, but you have to play for quite a long time just as the guy running around before you get to the point where your machines are doing stuff for you. And yeah, there's also like, this isn't a combat game, right? This isn't that there. You can sort of punch some characters and do some sort of basic Mario style defeating of enemies, but this isn't a combat focused game. So the jars end up being like the way that you do your sort of moment-to-moment skill expression of like, oh, where's the best place I can throw this? Oh, up there, because the treasure will land there and not go everywhere. That kind of thing. And it might not look like the most exciting thing when you're doing it, but I sort of know from the first big round of playtesting that people find it compelling enough to play this for quite a long time. So I think the treasure collection aspect almost has like a... Once you start understanding what the relics do, and one of the things I'd like to do over time is give the players a little bit more control over the relics that they get. We do have a merchant for that. I want him to spawn in more places. But you do start to get ways of manipulating how much treasure is worth, or the conditions under which particular treasure spawns. So there's a set of items here. We've got... so rubies are worth 10 coins, the red rubies. We've got a relic that makes them worth double. We've got a relic that means that for every red room you've drafted, a jar now contains an extra ruby, right? So the jars normally contain about 12 coins. But if you get the cursed purse and you start deliberately building loads of red rooms so that your level becomes more dangerous, you could end up with each jar being worth like 100, maybe 200 coins if you had the cursed purse and the gambler's dice, right? So there's this kind of exponential treasure growth that you can get to by manipulating the world that you're building and the set of, if you've got the right set of relics. And then if you've got those two and like the toothsome key, then you can build as many red rooms as you like without using keys. So that's another, that's like, there's basically a package, a set of relics that go together here. And you've also got this one that means that hitting monsters now drops rubies as well, and then that one combos with the one that makes rubies worth twice as much. So there's a lot of little things you can do here to like manipulate the way that treasure spawns. And okay, yeah, we've got a green relic that makes pots spawn in green rooms, which don't normally have pots in. If you've got that, and then you've also got the cursed purse, then so you're building like there's a way of building like a little economic engine as you play this, and the people that get really good at it and score quite a lot of points will be doing that as they go along. And then by that time you'll be so onboarded into the game that if you collect like 10,000 coins and then die and lose it all, you're already going to be like a hardcore player of the game that's deep into the game, and that's not the sort of thing that's going to put you off at that stage. It's going to just be like, you know, the players that are like deep into a game have a different kind of relationship to it than new players. So what I would need to do eventually is make the onboarding of the game more friendly and everything, but I'm not interested in developing it in that direction yet, because we need to work out the end of the game and what the deep game feels like, and then gradually structure the early game so that it leads you to being able to do the later game, if that makes sense. It's just the classic build the first level last thing, but applied to something a bit more procedural and run based. Huh. So when I built over that asteroid and it blew it up, this was so, like, that's not communicated as well as it could be. I think when the asteroid blows up, we should have like fireworks or little bits of blue fire flying out of it. But someone had the idea of stuff you could build over that's floating around in space. So it's just kind of like building over something in Scrabble and getting a triple letter score or a double word score is how they described it. And that's what we've done there. And I think we will have more different variations on that, like asteroids that have different things in. I quite like the idea of there being a meat asteroid floating in space. And you blow it up and just loads of meat and teeth and stuff falls out of it. It's disgusting, but hey, that's kind of partially what we're going for. Cute but scary, and kind of cute and fairy tale but also disgusting. I like that kind of juxtaposition of things. Right, we're gonna bomb this safe so that we get the loot out of that. And that also gets us that relic down there. I'll get in that one. Put that in a city place. So yeah, a lot of the rooms that you see in this build are probably going to change over the next month or so. There's rooms like this where my logic was, oh, this is a really helpful room because you always need bombs, right? So having a room that's just 5 bombs is quite overpowered. So my logic was that room shouldn't have a door because the doors are part of your economy for your run of like, if I run out of doors and I've still got keys left, then I've basically like wasted a resource, right? So I was thinking really helpful rooms like the kitchen and the armory with the bombs in shouldn't have an extra door coming out of them. But it feels kind of unsatisfying to build this little tower. Looks nice, but it feels kind of unsatisfying to build it and then be at a dead end. So I don't know. I'm gonna consider some of those things as I rebuild some of these rooms. I think generally speaking, all of the rooms are probably gonna, but a lot of the rooms are going to end up being bigger because otherwise you can't really do any kind of internal platforming inside the rooms that is interesting, because it's just like you build the room, you walk in there, stuff is on the ground, and then it's like, well, why is this a platformer if it's just walking into a room and picking stuff off the ground, you know? If we put that there and then drop that torch on it, we can light that bomb and then we can blow that safe up. Go. Take this with me. I know another thing that a lot of people have struggled with in the onboarding is understanding that there's like a whole fire system and you have to light things. So people are like, how do I use bombs? How do I cook? It's like, well, you need to get a torch and you need to light things with the torch. So I think I need a way of I don't think tutorialize is the right word, but I need a way of making sure there's like a simpler version of using fire earlier on in the game, so that you start understanding that things in the game need to be lit with torches, you know. These need a flower. Aha, got the wings. Got the Kirby wings. I think, do you buy flowers? You do buy flowers. Excellent. But yeah, this is the bug that Gleb was talking about in the chat a minute ago. I can't... My map ain't mapping. Which means I can't find the exit. I do think this is nice though. To me, I think when we build the Steam screenshots, I know this isn't necessarily how it will, the final look of this screen, right? But I think this does sell part of the fantasy of the game. Because you look at it and you go, oh, it's a Metroidvania. And then if you go from looking at it and thinking, oh, it's a Metroidvania, to realizing that it's a Metroidvania where that gets built every time, right? Which is kind of what happens in Rogue Legacy, but it definitely hits different to feel like it's something that you built. And it's not Terraria. We're not like building a cozy little home for ourselves in a big proc gem world, but we are getting a proc gem world that's different every sort of 5 minutes, because you die quite frequently in this and you fail quite frequently in it. And I think that's part of the appeal. Yeah, the fairies. I really, really like the fairy behavior. They have a lot of character, considering that what they're doing is mostly random. They have two modes. They have one mode where they just sort of stay near you, and that's when they kind of go through the wall and go over the level like that. And then they have another mode where they become a bit more of a physics object and they bounce around. And that's when they sort of start grabbing objects and throwing them up in the air like you see there. So the thing with the fairies is you get them by putting items in these fairy altars, and then you've got a fairy following you around, and you can use them to do stuff. So, you know, they sort of have a mind of their own, and they'll take over turrets, and they'll go around and smash jars for you. That's another thing. And that's, they don't know they're smashing a jar. They just find nearby objects and throw them in the air. And sometimes that's a jar, and sometimes it's they eat the berries. They squish the berries and eat them. But they have a very small set of logic, but it comes across as them having a real character, which is quite nice. Also, my children did the voices for them. So when you hear the fairies going and stuff, that's I got my kids to just record loads of silly noises, and then I pitched it up and put some and there's like an actual sleigh bell that is in my room that is that sound that they're making as well. But yeah, they don't do as much as I'd like them to. I want the fairies to be like... The idea is that once you've got them, they're helpful, but they're also kind of a bit chaotic, and in some ways they might make the game slightly more difficult for you while you've got them following you around as well. And I will just keep... I guess as I add other objects to the world which the fairies could interact with, I will just add those interactions, and we'll end up with a kind of like richer set of things they can do. But because, like, one of the design things with this game is because we're basically playing the same game over and over again, and it's not like different levels, it's, you know, you might have a different set of rooms that you can use on a different run, but generally speaking, your runs are going to look quite similar. I want to make it so that as you get deeper into a run, the variation of what can be in that run goes up, right? So, you know, if you build your 6th green room or your 8th red room, and that's the game's proxy for understanding that, okay, this is like a mid to late game player because they're managing to build quite a lot of stuff. You know, they've unlocked quite a lot of keys and they've spent quite a lot of keys. then, you know, deeper into your run, there should be kind of more chaos and more stuff that you don't see earlier on in the run. So there's more things that you have to kind of learn about and adapt to. And this is all kind of theoretical, but that's kind of what I'm working with at the moment. So we might make something that only shows up deep into a run and then give the fairies a special interaction with it. So then you've got, like, I guess, more surprises to encounter and parts of the system to learn about as you get deeper into the game. Harold, that's a silly suggestion. And I'll give you the benefit of the doubt this time, but just bear in mind that sarcasm doesn't travel very well in text, so... I don't make things to make money, and I think most people who are motivated by that shouldn't really be making indie games. They should just get a job working for someone else. But the real reason why indie devs probably shouldn't invest their time in making pay-to-win mobile games is that most of the way that you drive users to play a pay-to-win mobile games is by spending loads and loads of money on ads. User acquisition. Oh yeah, we do have a map shortcut, don't we? Keep forgetting about that. Most of the really good one-time paid mobile games that I've played over the years have been like games that were on PC first and then were ported. But there are obviously some classics like Monument Valley. Can the game generate loops at all? So I'm just going back through the chat. The grey category of rooms looks like a locked or non-option in the select menu. That's interesting, yeah. So I'm going to put myself a task. Tint grey toward... We actually want it to be more of a sort of slightly purpley grey than a grey, I think. I'm alright with the safes not looking super obvious because you need to sort of spot them. Questions about devlogs? I'm going to answer that in a minute when we get back to playing. Someone asked about devlogs for marketing. Which I could talk about the benefits of doing devlogs, but I think you need to think about... Like, one of the... Well, I'll get into this in depth in a minute, but let me just read the rest of the chat. Frederick Len, counterpoint to the 5-bomb room, that's a bunch of walls you need multiple bombs to get through. Yes, that's a good idea. There are a couple of rooms like that. So the dungeon has the little puzzle where you need to go and find that skull key to open the door. That always needs bombs. There's a room called the fort that you need bombs to get into. But yeah, it's not as maybe as obvious as it could be. There's a Steam page backend set up, but it's not live yet. We do have rooms that have like inaccessible areas within the room. So you open the door, you go into the room, and then there's parts of the room you can't get to without a bomb or a key. Firehose said, what determines whether the fairies are in their normal fairy sprite or lightball mode? They go into the fairy sprite when they're hovering, and they go into lightball mode when they're rushing and moving around. Which again makes it feel... It feels like there's some character there, but it's very simple logic. See, my ideal indie game on mobile is usually one where you're not controlling a character. Like, I hate playing real-time action games on mobile. But things like 80 Days, that's like a visual novel with some strategy stuff in. Things like Mini Metro. I played the iPad version of Darkest Dungeon quite a lot. It had a few UX problems, but it's still pretty good. Anything turn-based translates quite well. And then there are some sort of like small premium indie games that were mobile first, right? Like Reigns. I don't know if you played Reigns. Reigns is like a kingdom management game where you use swiping left or right like Tinder. And you can play it on the PC, but obviously that interface makes more sense on a phone. Yeah. The things you ignite should have a common element in the mesh, like a white thread. Interesting. Yeah, the problem with trying to develop any kind of mobile game is you have to pay for user acquisition, because people who play mobile games play them from ads. If you bomb the door's gone. Yeah, so, Devlogs. I think... So, one of the things I've been thinking about marketing a lot recently, and right, my background here is weird, right? Because I have done marketing work within a marketing company, right? I haven't made and marketed my own game. So when I talk about marketing, I'm talking about like general marketing practices for anything. And, you know, and also what I've learnt while doing the YouTube as well, which is, you know, a separate thing from my own games. Although I stream dev on here occasionally. And one of the things to understand is that, you know, just like making games, making videos is something that you get better at as you do it, right? So if you have some kind of schedule for yourself, like for example, I think the dev who's making Goblin Isle tries to do a video once a month or something. You have a schedule for yourself and you commit to that, then you're going to get better at doing the thing. But if you only make a video when you have that external goal of like driving people to a Steam page or something, then that only one video that you make is not going to be a very good video because you haven't been practicing to do videos, right? So if you did a devlog every month, and like obviously that devlog shouldn't just be dialing it in, it should be still, you know, you're trying to show people the exciting things about your game rather than just go, I made this icon bigger, you know? You're not just sort of describing dull stuff that you did that's quality of life. You want to describe the things that players are going to find interesting. And when I've done devlogs for this, it's slightly different because I have an audience that's mainly developers, right? But if you're doing something to actually try and grow an audience for the game, then you need to show what's interesting. But if you sort of leave it and you go, okay, well, at so-and-so date, I've got this thing I want to drive people to, and I'm going to make one video then to, like, get an audience. It's not going to be a very good video, and it's not going to do its job because you haven't been practicing doing that thing, you know? And I think the other way you can think about it is very much like I'm doing on this stream now, using it as a way to think out loud about what you're doing so that it comes out better. Because anyone who is like working in a field, in order to get better, needs to do some sort of reflective practice. And just using it as a way to sort of talk about what you've learned so that you're like externalizing that, it kind of helps you reinforce the learning for yourself, right? So you can do it with the kind of main goal of like, I want people to see and pay attention to my game, but there are lots of other reasons you could be doing it. And I think one of the things about doing game dev or doing any sort of creative project where you're in charge of it is the thing that decides whether something is a good idea or not is basically like how many things it achieves at once. Because you end up with, you know, and we're going to have a spreadsheet like this in a minute, you end up with like a big list of things you could do, like loads of different things you could do with your time, and you have to work out a way of working out which one is the better thing to do with your time. And the thing that determines that value of that thing is usually that the thing sort of solves lots of different problems, you know, or like helps you out in multiple ways. So whenever you're thinking about like some sort of marketing thing you can do, or a development thing, it's like that's the way I would evaluate it. It's like, okay, well, what if I make a devlog and no one watches it? Have I wasted my time? Well, it depends what you did in order to make the devlog, right? So if in making the devlog you did something that is helpful for the like design or, you know, adding certain types of content to the game, then maybe it wasn't a waste of time, even if no one watched the devlog, you know? That's kind of the way I have to manage things. As someone who has like a million ideas every day and can't possibly execute on all the things I want to do, you know, I'm making a game. I'm doing certain bits of work on other people's games as well. I'm making videos. My videos are stupidly high effort for game dev YouTube. You know, they have songs in and skits and all sorts of silliness. The only way I can really prioritize my time is to just every idea, it's like waiting to see how many things it achieves at once. And if an idea only achieves one thing, unless that thing's really, really important, then I don't do it. See, we've got the this is magnets a bit broken there. You can get stuff through walls. I'm not sure if I'm bothered about that though. I think tiny glitchy exploits that benefit the player, as long as they're reasonably obvious and the players would find them out quite early on, I don't really mind if that magnet goes through walls a little bit. I don't know. Broken. Counterspell. That's a good... Yeah, I hadn't heard that music. Your first 1,000 fans are typically other musicians. Yeah, because the people that make stuff are like the hardcore weirdos that will usually play or listen to something that's a bit rougher, you know? Like other musicians are more likely to be happy to listen to something that hasn't been mixed and mastered properly. And like other game devs... This is kind of like the playtesting advice I often give. It's like... when you're playtesting with players, you can't expect them to look past certain things because they can't. They can't imagine like the grey box version of your game but with art. So you have to always factor that in. And that, I'm not saying that you can't test with the grey box, but it means you have to sort of really explicitly explain things. Whereas when you test with other game devs, they will just know intuitively that what stage of game dev you're at and like ignore the fact that some of it's ropey. It's the same sort of principle, right? But it does mean you get different sorts of data from playtesting with different sorts of people. Yeah, the text. Don't worry about the tiny text. That's getting replaced later on. It is not the end style. We need to do that pop up as well when you get. So when you pick up these books or maps, these are the things that shuffle an extra room into your deck. And we don't have the pop-up for that currently. That's where the pop-up was. And then the resolution of the HUD changed to be Ultra HD, and now we just have, you can actually see the text here. It says a random golden room has been shuffled into your deck, and you can just see it there. So there will be like a pop-up to show the golden room icon. This is like the icon for showing golden rooms. The golden rooms need to be more fancy as well. I think I'm going to put like a dome on them so they look like what's the capital in Elden Ring called? I mean, a lot of this is very Elden Ring. We've got Caelid, and then the golden rooms I'm going to put like a dome on them in some way. A dome of blocks. Because they don't look very fancy at the moment. They're mainly just there to give you cool stuff. I'm just reading Fred's question. So Nate, fluid may be on the cards at some point. So I do want to do fluid because having like, yeah, being able to break some blocks and some water or acid falls down from a level above and floods the level you're in, great, that would be neat. But we need to rebuild the character controller first, and then the character needs a way of swimming, which I think will just be like old school Mario, like you flap in the water by jumping multiple times and they swim up, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's definitely on the cards. I do like the idea of there being a fluid thing. And the thing about fluid is, like, once you've made it, you can have water and lava and acid. You know, they can be done relatively cheaply because they all use the same stuff for spreading and doing the kind of gravity or flood fill or however you want to implement that thing. Yeah. Yeah, so the gas does actually spread in blocks, but I kind of made it visually not clear that that's what's happening. So when you have those fungal things, I've called them chokers in the engine. There's these, so you get the fungus blocks. The fungus blocks spread, right? And part of that is so that if you build a massive level and you build loads of red rooms and you're not careful, the red rooms will get blocked. So when you try and go back through them, they'll be too full of blocks for you to go through, and you'll have to either destroy some blocks with fire or bombs or go a different way. So these things that are spawning up here, these throw out gas, and when there's loads of them, you're kind of generally alright to jump in the gas. But if you go in an area of it and there's loads of it, then you'll start to lose health like that, and then there's a relic that prevents that. But that gas is actually only a single block wide, and then the graphic is smeared and spread. And it looks very kind of grungy and janky, but I quite like how sort of mid-90s rasterized that, posterized that graphic is. It's dirty. Yeah, I hadn't played Noita when I started making this, and then someone recommended it, and I was like, oh yeah, this is very much in the same sort of space. I think the gas is... It's been so long. Like, I haven't been playing the game recently, so... Let's test if the gas is still flammable. Sometimes I have a memory of something working a certain way, but because there's so much in the game now, it's not always accurate because my memory... Yep, gas is flammable. The fungus is very, very flammable, which is helpful for getting yourself unstuck if it builds over where you are, but you can also just completely destroy the floor by trying to burn the fungus, so it's a risk. The way fire works in this isn't very, like, consistent either. There's a different type of fire logic for everything that can burn in the game. It's not very... I mean, there's some of it's a bit more systemic, but... I've got the knuckle dusters that let you punch the red blocks, but sometimes they do that. Yeah, having the rooms not able to override each other was just a thing I made a decision on very, very early because there's a bunch of reasons. One, it just limits the choice in a way that's not very satisfying, because if you draw the room and you can't place it there, then we either need to just say, oh, you can't place this here, and then it's like, well, you know, now you only have two options. Or we make it sort of half draw and not get rid of stuff, which led to, I had it set up initially that way, and it led to a lot of blockages. And then it felt like making the rooms destroy the rooms that they stamp over felt a little bit more chaotic, and it means that, like, you're destroying stuff as much as you're building stuff, which is nice because we don't want players to think the building in this game is about, like, being precious and making something lovely and making a cozy little base like in Terraria or something, right? Because that's just never going to be what this game lends itself towards. So having the building be a little bit clumsy and causing destruction is kind of fun, and also it means you can make some deliberate decisions to build something over a room so that you can smash the blocks in that room and get stuff out of them, or, like, you know, if I were to build a room over that safe, all of the loot would come out of that safe, for example. We've got a thing where the music stops when you run out of keys, which is deliberate as well. So it's sort of just like a subconscious, time to go home. Time to go home now. You don't have any more keys. We're turning the music off. But then if I pick up another key, the music will start again. See you later, counterspell. Want an ice cream? I got stuck in the wall. That hasn't happened for a while. Always seem to have these issues with when there's a drop through these like branches are like half-size drop-through blocks, and whenever there's one next to another block, we always end up with wall stuck issues. So you'll be bringing food back to your boss, right? I was trying to bring the ice cream back that time, but I got stuck. Bring food back to your boss. You get crystals from that. These gradually tick off, which means that eventually you'll run out of things you can get crystals from. But it means that the early part of the game, you're very much focused on trying to cook recipes and bring them back here, which I haven't been doing. But part of that is because I just know how to make all of them, so it's not interesting to me. We've also got this cookbook where it's like icon plus icon equals this, this plus icon equals this. So you've got somewhere it just blatantly tells you what to add together, and somewhere you need to work it out yourself. And it's that kind of Vampire Survivors type recipe system of some it tells you the third thing and some it tells you the first thing or whatever. And we will kind of gradually be developing more recipes that go in here. And some of them are... So the motive of the game, just to give you like if you imagine it as a sort of 3-act story structure, the first act of the game, and that there is some story behind this, and like I said, all of this dialogue is placeholder. That's why it's so tiny, because it's from ages ago. At the start of the game, you're just doing your job. So you're working for the wizard, you're collecting treasure for him, you're bringing him food. And then by the end of the game, you're going to have realized that he's evil and you're trying to do away with him, right? And there will be like a super hard late game run that you will have to do. You know, if you think of what it's like to build an ender portal and try and end Minecraft, you know, that's all stuff that you could do very early on in the game if you knew how to do it, but you have to sort of gradually work out how to do it. And then, yeah, you'll be throughout the game, you'll gradually be transitioning from like working for the evil wizard to realizing the evil wizard is bad to trying to defeat the evil wizard, right? So early on in the game, in order to get the blue crystals that we use to like upgrade our keys or buy more hearts, get another key. So we start runs with more keys. We can kind of like build more. Then we can. So when you're seeing the early part of when you're seeing me play at the moment, you're not seeing the early game. So what I'll do now, I'll clear my progress and start the game with just 5. So with 5 keys and 3 hearts, which is how most people will experience the start of the game. And now we haven't ticked off anything on this list, right? So these are the kind of meals that he's waiting for, and he only likes to get each meal once. So you get crystals for completing these, but they get ticked off. So eventually you can't get any more crystals from doing the cooking part of the game, and then you need to basically move on and do the rest of the game. The crystals are initially used for upgrading your keys and your hearts, and then later on there's a way of unlocking blue rooms, which I'll try to do now actually on this save, and then you can basically shuffle blue rooms into your deck at the start of a run. So there's a little bit of deck building, but it's only per run. Like you can, there's rooms you can find during the run, which are the golden rooms. We can find lots of different rooms during the run that can be shuffled into the deck, but the golden rooms are the only ones that you can only find during the run. You can like get duplicates of green rooms and red rooms and stuff from picking up books and stuff. But the blue rooms are like, you have to unlock them by doing something, and then that allows you to purchase them at the beginning of the run if you've got enough crystals. Yeah, maybe we could give Lem a little cape. So I have the intention. It's on my list. It's not a dead set greenlit feature, but I would like to have little outfit sprite overlays at some point. So you start off with a chef one, and then, you know, later on you can have a little wizard hat or something. I don't know. I just think it would be neat, but it's also not like... It's one of those things that could be an interesting little sink for some resources in the game so that people have more stuff to spend their collectibles on, but I do tend to try and focus on things that have utility first, and then that kind of cosmetic thing later on. But the thing I like about the costumes idea is we can make it very clear at the start that your character is a servant by making them like a little chef, and then as the game progresses you go, oh, I'm not a chef anymore, I'm a brave knight, you know. The very first character design that I had in this was a knight, and then I thought, well, people are going to think that it's a combat game because it's a knight, so I need to make it a more kind of passive, vulnerable looking character, and then we went from there. And in making myself a QA note, radar detector doesn't work. Yeah, butler, like a butler suit would be a good early unlock as well. You know, you've got like vanilla Lem, you've got chef Lem. You start off with the chef Lem outfit, or maybe you get that after your first food delivery, and then you can maybe go into Lem's little bedroom or little workshop and switch between them or something between runs. So this relic is supposed to tell us which direction to go in to do the thing to unlock the blue rooms, but at the moment it's not working. So this has different directional arrows on, and the point of this is when you sort of notice that it goes left or right. I get up there? Yeah. Chimney sweep is good, yeah. Ah, the cursed purse. Present boxes no longer... I should call them gift boxes, because gift isn't a... Another principle in this game as well is trying to use the relic descriptions to give hints about how other parts of the game works without tutorializing it, right? So, for example, there's nothing in the game that tells you that blowing up those things that don't look like vaults gives you loot, but there is a relic that tells you that there is a thing called a safe, and if you blow it up, this will happen, right? So I'm trying to make it so that some of the descriptions of things will give you a hint as to how something in the game world works, without there being a need to like outright tell people. Yeah, we can see your comments, Thanatos. Is there a filter to remove anti-Bezos stream platform's name? I can't see the ones that mention Twitch, no. I don't understand. I'm multi-streaming to Twitch as well because there's some people that prefer to watch on Twitch. Yeah, I can see the people commenting on Twitch on the multi-stream. Thanks, Tom. The irony, if you want to talk about Twitch, you've got to do it from Twitch. That's interesting. Yeah, I don't have a filter set up for that, so that's just YouTube blocking Twitch-related stuff. That's funny. Although I think you can probably find a quicker, easier to type shortcut for talking about Twitch than calling it the Bezos platform. How did I get this stuck? That's really stuck. How did that happen? That's interesting. I have no way of exploding my way out. That's the most stuck I've got on this in a while, because normally when I get stuck it's because I fall down, and then that feels okay because it's like a skill failure, whereas this is like, huh, what has happened here? How to plan the UI. Where a player manages their inventory. I mean, the way to start is to take screenshots of, or you don't even have to take screenshots. If you go on game interface database, game UI database, and get the inventory screens from loads of different games, and then try and just look at them and work out why they're doing things the way that they do. That's always the start, is like actually look at references. Because the tendency is to just think that you remember a game well and assume you can do it from your head. Okay, so we've got double Ruby value. Okay, I forgot I reset my save, so I need to try and... I need to genuinely try and aim for the blue crystals so that I can get more keys now. So I have a goal. Destroyed safes contain 10 more treasure for every room you've built this run. So this is the fort that was the room I was talking about before, where you've got like a you kind of can't get in there without building round or blowing it up. Can I just about light that TNT block up there if I get the torch at it from the right angle? I can't jump up there now. Ah. Got no keys. I'm stuck again. I mean, this is the thing. It's like making sure that the game can make it clear when you're stuck. I think it's okay for that to be how runs end, but it's making sure people are onboarded into that in some way eventually, because this is another situation where you're stuck and you basically need to end the run. And I guess that's just a thing I will solve over time. But at the moment, it's not super clear when you first start playing the game. And if you've played Blueprints, then you know that that's the thing to expect in a room drafting game. You just sort of box yourself into a corner and you can't continue, and then you finish. But here it takes a moment to dawn on you that that's what's happened. And there's not really a there's not really a quick way of detecting that for the player because of all of the different things that would determine whether you or not you can get out of where you are. Oh, that's a... That symbol is a spore ball. Yeah. Okay, let's just take a berry back. I've started a totally new save, so none of the food items have gone back yet. Yeah, honestly, I'm not worried about the fact that the player can get stuck or need rescuing, because I think that's just something you need in a room drafting game for it to work. I'm just more musing over how do we make it clear that needing to abandon your run is a normal part of the game. You know? Because if the player can't get softlocked by building badly, then the skill element of the room drafting kind of goes out the window a little bit. Okay, so these first couple of runs, I'm going to be more focused on trying to cook stuff, I guess. So can I cook that bat? By... Okay, I can't cook that back because I can't get to the fire anymore. Is there a fire over here? There is. Make a bat burger. I want to redraw meat. I'm putting that on my task list. I want the meat to look like a big meat on the bone rather than a flat steak that looks burnt. Redraw meat. Boy likes that. Yeah. This is unbalanced at the moment. We can level things up way too easily too early on. But I haven't really done any balancing towards that apart from sticking random numbers in. That will be approached in a more systematic way at a later date. Because I'm cursed with knowledge and I know what I'm supposed to do to unlock the blue rooms, I guess what I'm going to try and do is just keep building in the same direction for as long as I can. Because we can't use the radar detector at the moment, so we only have like a 50-50 chance of building in the right direction, but each run I will just try and do that and try not to go up or down too much. We do want to build the reliquary, but I don't want to build it there because it's going to block my route because it doesn't have a door on the other side. I do think the thinking behind having some of the higher level rooms or the more useful rooms not have a door, I think that's sound, but I think in that case they still need to be like quite big rooms that have a jumping puzzle inside them. Otherwise they don't feel very interesting to engage with. You're only building them to get the resource out of them, and then you leave them immediately, you know. So I think like that one, the refectory, if that was like a big tall domed room, and when we go in there to get the stuff, we're not just like immediately getting it. We have to jump up and get it up off some platforms and stuff, that kind of stuff. I think that would be better. I'm going to do a review of a lot of the rooms sometime soon. I've started building a spreadsheet around that. Yeah, Nate, that's an interesting... because I think a lot of people find some parts of this game a bit too harsh because it's like run-based and you lose everything. But I mean, there is some meta progression. The game gets easier as you go along. But yeah, it is way more forgiving than Spelunky. It might not feel like it if you were playing it yourself, because there's still some kind of control quirks that I'm playing around. Places you can get stuck, ways that the control doesn't work exactly as it should. But those will get ironed out in time. Okay. Run out of keys. Music fades out. Music fades back in because we picked up a key again. Got 2 kitchens in my deck for some reason. I think that's how it's set up at the moment, actually. So another thing is I want to keep the starting deck relatively small. So it's like 8 grey rooms, 8 red rooms, and 8 green rooms. So that when you start adding rooms to it, they have a decent chance of appearing. Boop! I'm going to take a poop back for my boss. Uh-oh. I can still get back that way. I'm taking a poop. Look at that. What's that coin doing? I think I ended up making it so you always have a sort of coin magnet, but the relic that you pick up that's a coin magnet just makes it more powerful. Ah, yeah, I love it when your game gets complex enough that you forget things that you put in your game. So not only can you sell the flowers to the gnome, but they are worth way more than most things. So the flowers grow in green rooms the longer you you build a green room, it will have some sprouts in, and then every couple of rooms you build, those sprouts will advance in their kind of growth stage. So they don't just grow over time, they grow based on like how big you've built the level. So yeah, that's cool. So coming back through the level, picking up the flowers, selling them, and that being like a better use of the shop than like just selling random carrots or something. Alec Webb, would you consider a stream where you roast chat's game ideas? No. And the reason for that is the only people who I'm interested in hearing the ideas of are people who I know what they can do. That probably didn't make much sense grammatically. I'm only interested in hearing someone's ideas for a game if I know what they can do, technically or artistically, or who they're working with or whatever. And this is why, like, when I started this channel, I was doing, I was trying to set up a consultancy business so that I could help other people with their games. And the first place I did that on was Fiverr. And I did like game design document reviews. And about half of the jobs I got, it was like, well, your document's fine, your idea's fine, but I can't really judge how good an idea this game is unless I know which parts of it you can actually create, right? Because whether or not something is a good idea for you comes down to what you're capable of rather than like inherent qualities of the idea. There's lots of game ideas that could be good ideas or could be bad ideas, but like whether or not the person proposing the idea can pull it off is a big part of that, you know? So I definitely think that the economy in this is still too generous, but that's fine for this stage. I'll tighten it up way later on because it's easier for testing. If we can unlock things quicker, then we should be able to. Find more golden pots. Okay. What does the poo do? What do you mean, what does the poo do? You eat it. But yeah, talking to people you don't know about their game ideas is a bit like talking to someone you don't know about dreams they've had. You know, like, if someone tells you about a dream they had, and you know their personal context, it could be quite interesting because it's like, oh, what's going on in your life that your subconscious made that little story in your head, right? That's maybe interesting. Sometimes it's interesting to hear about people's dreams if it's someone you know, but if it's someone you don't know, it's just like, this is nonsense. And game ideas are a bit like that, because when a friend talks to me about their game idea and I've seen games they've made before, then I can see how what they're talking about fits into their sort of career of making things. Whereas a stranger, it's just like, yeah, okay, that's a game idea, I guess. And the thing is, so much of the work of building a game is just recreating features that exist in other games. So it's not very exciting to just think about, oh, what if it was Vampire Survivors but cowboys? But yeah, I can imagine that. And then I move on with my day and don't think about it ever again. That's why you got to do things like prototype. And if you don't want to prototype something, draw it. That's a form of prototyping. I'll show you mine actually. I've got these bits of footage that I've been. I put them aside to do a video on later on, and I will show you now the sort of thing they are, because you'll find it interesting, I guess, because otherwise why would you be here? If I just go on my Google Drive for, so this is my, so I did some sketches of other game ideas, and I created a sort of time lapse of them on Procreate. So this is me thinking through the games I might make after Dirt World, right? And I just do a full screen mock-up of the game. Laughing Disaster said, how do you look at someone's body of work and think this is a bad idea for you other than the scope of the idea being too big? Well, because you can see what skills they've got from their other work, right? If someone has made 5 games and all of those games are like business management simulators, and then their idea for their 6th game is a very intensely character and controls and camera driven action game, then that's probably not such a good idea for them, right? They can do it as a learning project by all means, but this is the thing. Whether the main point I'm trying to get at is whether something is a good idea or not is incredibly contextual, and some of that is based on you and your existing skills. Some of it is based on why you're doing the project, right? Like, are you doing the project to learn a skill, or are you doing the project to release a game? Those are different needs. And sometimes things start off as learning projects, and then you get a bit deeper into them and you go, oh, this is actually good, this could be a real game, right? Which I think is the path most people should go down. I think a lot of people are just like, I want to release a game to sell a game and make some money, and that is okay to have as a secondary goal, but it doesn't lead to games that sell like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of copies, because the things are uninspired. And like, I think making a good thing is a combination of like making something you're very passionate about and making something that you also have the skills to deliver on well, right? Which is why I'm always talking about spec yourself projects that don't use skills that you don't enjoy or aren't passionate about doing. You know, like the classic example is the RPG with the characters that all speak in placeholder text, because you've decided to make a type of game that has a very large writing requirement and you don't like doing writing. That's the kind of thing. But even just doing this makes an idea into something that someone else can assess and consume, right? So you can look at this mock-up and you can go, yeah, I understand what that game is. The idea of this game was like an auto-battler, like Underlords, where you set up the board and then watch it play with naval stuff and sea monsters. But the way that you upgrade the ships is like a Noita style. You fill their inventory with like cannonballs and stuff, and then that's what they fire. So it would be like the Noita 1 system in a semi-real-time auto-battler like Dota Underlords. And this is my least favorite of the 3 ideas that I did this for. And then the second one is like a surgery game. And this is basically mechanically the same as Trauma Center or Amateur Surgeon I worked on before. The reason I like the idea of this game is, again, coming back to that idea of like building on what you know, is that I know how all of Amateur Surgeon's game mechanics work, and I could make a slightly more interesting, darker cyberpunk version of that. And I think there are ways that I could structure that in a way to make it an interesting sort of run-based game with a little bit of a story element. And then the third one is this is my OS simulator that I would like to build one day about running a record label, right? And really just this process of just drawing the things out gives you a thing you can show other people, like I'm doing to you now, and go, oh, which of these ideas is interesting? But you can actually see the idea rather than just hear it described, which is way better. But the reason this was a helpful exercise for me to do when I'm assessing, taking 3 game ideas and trying to work out which one of them to do next, right, is I realized that this game, now some of you would have seen these 3 games and found this game the most appealing, but I realized when I was drawing it, and even just the process of drawing it showed me this, is that this is the game idea that I'm least passionate about out of all of these. And part of the reason for that is that I think this is a game that I could execute incredibly well, because if you ever played Trauma Center or Amateur Surgeon, it's basically you do a level of doing surgery on someone, and then before and after the level you have a bit of story. And I really think that my previous experience working on a game like these, and having a game where I can do kind of character work and write funny little stories about things, but there's no need for like a massive expansive plot, that's a very good use of my strengths. And I had the idea for this world building where it would be sort of like a, if you imagine the type of characters you would have in a British crime drama, like a Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, or something like Shameless or Brassic, like a cyberpunk setting with a host of characters that you wouldn't normally meet in a cyberpunk setting, because cyberpunk settings are nearly always America or Japan, right? So we have like these like small town British characters, but we have it in 100 years in the future, doing surgery on people and giving them implants type thing. this felt like a much better use of the things I know I can do. Whereas this one, I think this is a good game idea, but I think it's a generically good game idea that I wouldn't necessarily be able to execute better than anyone else, right? So I can show you these ideas now, and I know that if you copied my idea and you tried to execute this idea, my version would probably still come out in a way that was more interesting and charming and marketable and so on. Whereas if someone saw this idea and they thought, oh, that's a good idea, I'll try and copy that, there's a good chance that their version will come out better than mine. And part of that is just me having an honest assessment of what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. I also think this is a very strong idea, and because I have a background in, like, my first job when I was in my late teens was in a record shop. And I know there is a cozy game about managing a record shop, but I really like the idea of a game where you manage a record label and you have, like, acts that you book gigs for on the calendar and you book recording for them and stuff like that. I think this is another game idea that I would be uniquely suited to be able to execute on in a way that was fun and like delivers on certain fantasies and stuff. But like, just case in point from what we were talking about a minute ago, you can see how much more interesting it is to hear about someone's game ideas when you can see something and you have some sort of visual stimulus, because you can play a game in your head by looking at a screenshot of a game, right? That's why screenshots on Steam are so powerful, is you can look at a game, you can see the interface, you can see what's on the screen, and your knowledge of pre-existing games allows you to sort of put yourself in that position and play the game in your head a little bit. Whereas when someone describes a game verbally, you just don't have a way of doing that. So I always draw my game ideas out because it's just a way easier way to have something to show to other people to discuss, but it's also easier to assess whether I'm passionate about it because I get halfway through the drawing and start to cut corners and like not be as detailed and stuff, and that's like a really interesting way of assessing your own like level of enthusiasm about the different ideas you have. And people go, oh, I can't draw, but you know, drawing is part of design, and those drawings aren't intended to look good, they're intended to like convey information. And one of the things about learning to draw in order to do design is getting that understanding of like there are different types of drawing that are different for different things. And sometimes when you're designing a system in a game or doing level design or something, you have to do some drawing. And the purpose of that is not to create a beautiful picture that people will be impressed by and go, oh, look how good this person is at drawing, right? Which is what a lot of people that don't draw think the only possible outcome of drawing is. But sometimes drawing is just to kind of think something through for yourself, and sometimes drawing is to communicate something that is not about like the beauty of the drawing. I would totally play, Alec, I would totally play your game about haunted art museum heists. Playtesting in person. I mean, you will develop your own sort of way of playtesting as you do it. So, you know, the fact that you're Ratman Earthbenders, the fact that you are doing your first booth is amazing in its own right. So, props for sorting that out because it's just such a good thing to do. But yeah, I mean, running a playtest is a bit like a science experiment. It's like you kind of you know what sort of things you're interested in, and you're trying to design a situation to check those things. So you will have to decide for yourself things like how much do you tell the players, or like if a player is stuck, how long do you leave it before you help them get unstuck, and all of that kind of stuff. And I know it might be annoying to get like these kind of oh it depends type answers, but I think understanding that even with people that have done this as a job, like, you know, I've been, you know, named as a game designer in various different workplaces and stuff. It's still a case of you're designing the test each time you do it, you know, rather than there being a very specific way of doing it. Now, I always suggest to people to start out with doing fast forward playtesting, which is if you just Google playtesting FFWWDD, you'll find the Jesse Shell fast forward method, which I think is always a good place to start because it gives you a set of questions that force people to think about gameplay rather than other parts of the game. And that can be very helpful. But yeah, you'll feel it out as you do it. And I think one universally helpful piece of advice is, as you're watching people play your game and you're recording like issues or suggestions, try to focus on recording the issues rather than the solutions, right? So, you know, sometimes people don't tell you, sometimes people can't identify the actual problem they're having, so they will just tell you the solution they'd like, you know, oh, my character needs to have more health. And it's like, well, okay, that might be one solution for the problem that you're experiencing, but maybe the issue is actually that the game hasn't taught you how to block properly, or maybe the issue is that the enemies do too much damage or whatever, right? So whenever anyone in a playtest makes a suggestion to you about what you should do, you can note that down, but try and record the actual problem, because otherwise you come back to it later on and you've got this list of things you've said you're going to do and you can't remember why you said you were going to do them, because you've recorded the proposed solutions rather than the problems they're trying to solve, right? That's a general thing. That's not just playtesting. That's just like problem-based design of like making sure that the things that you're doing tie into the broader goals of the project. Like, what are you trying to achieve? And yeah, like with playtesters, just pay attention to what they get stuck on or the problems they're having. You're trying to identify the problems they're having, and then you have to sort of smile and nod and stuff when they tell you solutions, but it's not really their job to tell you the solutions, right? And some of the solutions they tell you will be bad steers, or they won't fit the game because they'll be like coming from a different sort of genre background and they won't really understand the type of game you're trying to make, so they will make suggestions that aren't good. And you have to, like, you know, you still, they think they're doing something nice for you by doing that, so you still have to be polite and everything, but often it's a case of like needing to have this filter of like, no, you are a research participant, you are not a co-designer, you know? Yeah, Alec, I will totally look at those sketches as well. I'm happy to look at sketches. I just realized who you are as well, which is like, I know who this person is now, so I know what this person can do. Right? So in terms of like your question, I will look at your game ideas because I know who you are, but when it's like, if it was just like random people in chat, then not so much. Because I can see what you're working on, and then I have a sense of like how some idea you might want to make builds on what you can already do and stuff. Like for example with you, Alec, like you're a very kind of strong illustrator, so there are types of games that I just wouldn't touch with a barge pole. Like, you can see how many frames of animation Lem has, right? It's like 4 frames, his run animation. It's really stupid. There are very few humanoid characters in this game, because I do not have the patience to learn how to draw and animate like very like good looking humanoid characters, right? Whereas, so that means that the game ideas that are appropriate for me are either going to contain very simplified cartoon characters if they're animated, or it would be something like, you know, the record label simulator where we have illustrations of people but they don't move. Whereas Alec is already doing very competent sort of character designs for like much more detailed characters and stuff. So that kind of changes the window of what's a good idea for you, you know? Yeah, fast forward little toucan, FFWWDD is favorite frustrated I mean, you'll find an article on it and it will explain, but I do find that framework quite helpful and a good place to start. And yeah, sometimes playtesters will have good suggestions and good ideas, and it's worth listening to some of them. But it's also just have an explicit, if they're kind of taking it quite seriously and they're sitting down to do like a proper session and they're not just like passing people checking out a game, you know, explain to them what you're doing and why you're doing it, because it's kind of like that issue that I've talked about before on the channel, that ambiguousness between a demo and a playtest, right? And how Steam has muddied the water a little bit on this, because a demo is much more like, here is our game, what you're experiencing now is, you know, very, very close to how the full game is going to be, and we're not changing it. We're just making more of this. Whereas a playtest is an experiment, and it's like trying to gather information. And at an event where there's lots of people wandering around playing games, there's going to be both those things, right? So there will be people demoing their games who have no intention of changing them based on feedback, and people who are there purely to get feedback, and everything in between. So the people that come across your stand at that convention aren't gonna, you know, they're not gonna really have a sense of the different stages that a project could be at, or the different reasons why you might be demoing it at an expo. So if any of them seem really keen and are like engaging for longer, then it's worth talking to them about the process, and like, because some of them will just think you're marketing a finished game, and if you're not doing that and you're still gathering information, you might have to like make it clear that what project stage you're at and so on. Have not played Ken. I have to play so many games for this channel, and Ken has not been one of them. And at the moment, when I get a chance to play like a finished released indie game, that time currently tends to go towards games that I need to play for research, you know? So like when I talked about playing Factorio the other day, that was literally because I have someone I'm mentoring that is making that style of game, and it's like, okay, so I need to play that as part of my job now, right? So yeah, there are whole areas of new indie games that I haven't played. Thanks, Nate. Yeah, I don't know. I might be able to go and fix the stream description now. Let me go and see. It's very annoying. It's just Streamlabs is poo-poo. Let's put this over here. So annoying. Like, I manually set this up at the start of the stream. It's just... I may have to give up on Streamlabs someday soon and go back to just only streaming to YouTube, because Twitch is... the multi-streaming to Twitch is just causing so many little issues. It doesn't work the way it's supposed to. I had a conversation with someone else the other day. We were doing like a podcast recording, and one of the things he mentioned, this is Josh Beiser from Game Wisdom. It's like a YouTube channel that's been running like 10 years now, I think. The way he put it, I thought was really interesting, was like, obviously there are things that you can, there are some universal game design things that you can take from one genre to another, but the way he was describing it was like, each genre of games has its own game design, you know? it's not just like there's a generic practice of game design and then you apply it to different sorts of games and then you get genres. It's like, well, if you're working in a genre, in order for the players of that genre to like and understand what you're making, like most of the game design work is on working in that genre space and like how much do you conform to expectation and how much do you deviate and all of that kind of stuff. And I find that quite interesting because it definitely resonates with, you know, what I see where people like don't have a home in the types of games they try to make and are constantly jumping between things. And I think you have to do that at some point to like work out what you want to make and what you enjoy making. But I think at some point you maybe have to lock in a little bit on one type of thing if you want to do it really well. I think, and I think this game is a good example of like, there are some parts of this game where I feel like I'm very much playing to my strengths, and like the art and the world building and the general tone of it feel very sort of me. But yeah, I definitely don't want to make a kind of character-focused action game after this. Okay, so I'm still in that process of like jumping around between things and working out where's the best place for me to spend my time, given how long a game takes, and the fact that I want to make more than one. And some people, the answer to that will be just like, you know, a very financially driven, what's the easiest thing I can make in 6 months that has the best chance of selling, you know, and a lot of the game dev discourse on YouTube revolves around that way of thinking, and I don't personally have a problem with that. I think it's a fine way, to approach things if you want to, if what matters to you most is like having a stable career doing the thing. But I also don't find it that interesting. Like, if someone was like, hey, let's have a conversation about game dev, and everything was about de-risking and like trying to do the most efficient thing possible, it's like, okay, that's sensible, but it's not interesting. And it's not the sort of thing I can get excited or passionate about. Whereas when it's one of the reasons why this channel is largely based around other people's games, is I like the novelty of looking at lots of different games and seeing what people are doing. And if I'd made this a channel that was just like, hey, I'm making games, watch me make games, then it's like, well, the subject matter is the same thing for a long period of time because you're working on the same game, you know? And find that a bit dull. Can we go back that way? Is that going to work? Build a veil over that. Or we can take a banana. Take a banana back. That's going to be worth loads. Oh, it's down there. I need to go down there. Can I drop that far? Someone asked for the health loss on when you fall down to be incremental, because at the moment it's like, if you don't fall that far, you lose 1 heart, and if you fall a bit further than that, you lose all of them. And someone was like, can we make that a bit more incremental so that you, oh, I lost my banana. So that you don't smash so easily. And I thought, well, I kind of want it to be a high-risk thing to jump a long way. I guess it invalidates leveling up the hearts if you can't use them to fall a long way. So maybe that's something that needs fixing. I'm going to put that to my list. More granular fall damage. Because I remember someone mentioning that before, and I don't think I've got it recorded anywhere. every time I look down at my pad and then look up again, I'm completely disoriented in the game. There it is. We could have a no fall damage item. Yeah, that would be a good idea. The relics are reasonably quick to iterate on and add more to the pool. And I think we're probably going to end up with a situation where we probably make more than we need, and then I'll have to get rid of some later on. I don't know if it would be too powerful. I haven't seen many situations. Like, there was a situation there where I wasn't sure if that would do full damage. It didn't do any, actually, so... But yeah, I think eventually we'll have maybe a more granular full damage model where, you know, if you fall a whole screen, you should probably take 2 hearts worth of damage, and if you fall further than that, it should start to increase, you know. I forgot how that feels. Feels so mean when he doesn't want your food. He blows it up. The other thing I'm going to do is make it so that the more runs you do and the more treasure you collect, and you come back here, he just has a massive pile of gold behind him that keeps growing. Thanks, Gleb. Gleb's literally doing hot fixes as I stream. I'm just yapping. I'm just playing a game and yapping. And Gleb is already fixing the game. The wizard didn't mind the carrot the first time, but he didn't want another carrot. That's the problem. We'll get another key, we'll get another heart. I'm gonna pull down that fix actually, Gleb, because that has made it harder to play, that bug, so it's probably worth updating. Evil Wizard Clinic. I would really love for bananas to become a slip hazard at some point, but they're quite rare. They're hard to find. Some boss that you can defeat by throwing a banana at them. I had just to give you another bit of behind the scenes. Obviously I haven't been in the project as much because of what I spoke about, and Gleb's been doing a lot of menu work, and I've been staying out of the project doing like yeah, this is the second chat. How recently did you download it? There are some options to like turn things off to make the kind of quality lower so it will run, but at the moment it's like we will optimize the game further at some point, but yeah, it's like it's not the priority at this stage, and because it's this is going to be a problem for us because it's a 2D game. People expect it to be low spec, and you know it should run on sort of mid-range computers, but people have this expectation of something being 2D not being resource intensive, and it's like, well, there's a lot of individual physics objects and blocks and stuff. But yeah, you can turn the resolution scale down, like Gleb just said. There are a few things you can do. And yeah, Ratman, Gleb's done a bunch of culling so stuff isn't running when it's not on screen and stuff like that as well. But yeah, just to give you another bit of behind the scenes, is basically I was struggling because I didn't know what the end of the game was, and I've sort of like there's this big section of the game where it's like I kind of know what the core of the gameplay here is, and I know what's fun about it, and that's good because it basically means I can just keep adding content that makes the game fun in that way, right? So that there's certain things in this game that are sort of solved, and the work of implementation is just making the rest of the stuff, but it's sort of I loosely know what type of stuff it is, and that's not a problem. Whereas the like understanding how someone finishes the game was a bit of a stumbling block, and that made it hard to develop like mid to late game content because I didn't know how we were going to be doing it. And so I had a call with Ed, who is the person who made a bit of the music and is also a narrative designer, who just helped me kind of he sort of posed some questions and then helped me reframe what I already thought was going on with the game's story towards a like, okay, what is the player trying to achieve by the end of the game and all that kind of stuff. That was really, really helpful because now I sort of know what the player is going to do to win the game at the end of the game, and that means that I can sort of create a on-ramp of things that lead up to that point. And because this isn't like a very combat focused game where like boss fights and things make sense, we came up with something that I think is going to work and be quite satisfying, but it still needs some details ironing out. But I feel much better about the game overall now that I've had that question or started to sort of formulate an answer to that question, because it can be like I don't know if other people have experienced this, but when there's a big part of your game where your answer to like how is this going to work eventually is just a big shrug, it can make building the rest of the game feel a bit pointless because you're like, well, even if I get this bit good, there's still that other thing and I don't know what I'm doing with that, right? And I think like that kind of thing of like, what's the end state of this game where someone goes, oh, I've played this for like 20 hours and I'm satisfied now because I did X. Like, what is that? And, you know, this is slightly more focused, story focused than, I know there's not much story in it at the moment, but it will be than something like Slay the Spire. So we're sort of in between Slay the Spire and Hades in terms of there being kind of a little bit of story in a run-based game. So approaching it from the perspective of like, what's the story first, and then from there working out what the gameplay is around that isn't the way I would normally do things, but it was really, really helpful. And that, you know, certain types of games have a very clear implicit story. Slay the Spire is a good example. It's like, you just from the title of the game, you're going to kill stuff, and the fact that it's a spire or a tower already suggests the kind of structure of that challenge, right? You're climbing the thing. And even if you know nothing about video games, you can sort of guess from that what the journey of the character is going to be. Whereas this game doesn't have a lot of that, because you start off just doing a service for someone, and it's like, well, how do you make that have like a satisfying ending? I think we got there. And there's still specifics to work out, but I at least understand the generalities of what we want to do a bit better, so... I'm definitely going to have a week soon where I just make loads more mobs, I think. I don't want them to be variations on each other, you know? Like, I want them to all have multiple uses. So, like, the bats are very kind of standard video game mobs, but the mushroom guys feel very unique to this game because you can throw them and they blow stuff up for you. I think mobs like that, where you can engage with them in ways that help you do other parts of the game, like they can blow up bits of the terrain and stuff, is quite neat. So probably more mobs that explode. Or more mobs that create things that explode, I guess. Like little robots, and when you damage them they spin off and blow something up. That kind of thing. See you later, Gnagna. Alex said, how do you choose balance between safe and familiar theme or subject matter and something more high concept or wacky? I think some of that is going to come down to like what you're comfortable doing. You know, and some of it will come down to the type of game you're making and what fits that. You know, like a game where you play a wizard is different from a game where you play an assassin and all of that kind of stuff. So you want to line the fantasy up with what you're doing. But I think, you know, in the example of this game, this is, I think when you have a knowledge-based game, which is about, you know, the players gradually trying to gather knowledge about the world so they understand how things work and they can operate it better, which is like how traditional roguelikes work. You can be a bit weirder because the weirdness almost encourages the player to think in that kind of way. And I think, like, I didn't get that for a very long time with Slay the Spire. I was like, why is this like weird, bizarro adventure time with the numbers filed off? That's what Slay the Spire felt like to me. And then I realized that they've done that on purpose because it sort of encourages you to approach the world in the game as kind of alien to you rather than something familiar. Right? And that's helpful in a game where you want the player to like actively think about what they're doing and analyze. Whereas if you're making a game that is much more of a power fantasy rather than a game where the player needs to really kind of think things through, then you might want to make something where it's like more cut and dry, obvious thematics, you know? I think those are the different kind of ways of thinking about it. But yeah, I mean, wacky, in the case of this game, wacky has been good because it means that we can create things that don't need to specifically map onto anything in reality. Like this thing, it's like, okay, I started with the idea that this would be like one of those, you know, those plastic holders that you get for kids' iPads, like a rubber protector for a kid's iPad. I was thinking of a computer that would go inside one of those, right? And that was partly trying to solve the visual design problem of like, how do we do a high definition UI and make it work with these pixel art objects that are already in the game? Because I didn't really want to have these pixel art objects and then have a separate drawn version for this menu. So it's like, okay, we'll make it a screen within a screen, and then this can be the physical, like, nice thing, and then this can be more digital and stuff. It's still not perfect. It's still like, you know, pixel art purists are not going to like it and stuff, but the fact that it's wacky and it's this weird mashup of like fairy tale and cosmic horror and stuff means that it's very easy for me to just pull things from different sources like that. I've got about half an hour left to do this today, so what I'm going to start doing is transferring stuff onto that spreadsheet and building that spreadsheet out as like this is, well, I'll just write down everything that I noted during those runs first, and then I'll work out like organizational stuff afterwards. So yeah, it's like where, Dace, that's a good point. So where are you going to put the weirdness part of your game? Like how you can't all be totally weird and alien. I mean, there are certain types of games that do that, but improve castle. Create new castle assets. That's the thing I need to do. I'm intrigued by Helix. I should probably know what Helix is, but I don't. Let's look. Ah, yes. Okay, yeah, I do know what this is. But even then, because it's a RPG Maker game and we have this, this is quite familiar, right? Like the interface and the way that these work. But I suspect that some of these abilities are not going to be. What was the other one where you play the knight? Weird medieval RPG Maker game. Like got this one. What's it called? Belvedere. I really like RPG Maker as a tool. I wish I had enough patience with this kind of combat system to want to do more with it. Because when I see people make stuff like this, I'm like, wow, so cool. Okay, I'm not going to record the wall stock issue because that's a separate bug. So I'm going to put that in Trello instead because we know that that's a bug that's part of the character controller rewrite. I mean, it's not even worth recording as a bug because it's going to just go out of date as soon as that gets rewritten. Fix radar detector. That's something I can do myself, I think. Do a pass on room descriptions. Do a pass on Relic descriptions. And that's really just what I was talking about earlier, of just making sure that there are hints to how other parts of the game work in those descriptions. And it gives players a reason to read them, and it's not just flavor text then as well. Redraw meat sprites. More granular fall damage. Some of these things aren't. Because if I can categorize things by what types of work they are, then I can schedule a session and go, right, okay, there's these different pixel art assets to make, so I'll do a whole session on that because it's easier to stay doing one skill for a couple of hours, although it's not my favorite way of working. I quite like jumping around between things. That's a procreate task. That's a procreate task. That is ideation. That is pixel art. That is ideation. That's code. That's ideation. Some of these ideation tasks will just sort of happen over time, but if I've got them on the list, then I'll come back to them later and go, oh, I've already done that, you know? That's code. That's writing. That's pixel art. That's code. I'm open. I mean, if you want to do streams, do streams. I mean, like I said earlier about doing devlogs, you will have to learn how to do the thing anyway. Like the amount of setup to make a video or to do a stream is quite a lot of work. So if you want to do them eventually, you should probably start doing them earlier than you think you need to do them, because there's like a whole skill set involved. I mean, you can see, like, this is a YouTube channel with, like, how many subscribers are we on? 35,000 subscribers, right? And when I do streams, they get between 50 and 100 regular viewers. And the Twitch, we only have, like, how many people on Twitch? It's like tiny. Right? So it takes a while to build up any sort of audience. Seven Twitchers. Okay. That's good. It's good. As long as there's more than 5 of you, then it's worth using this terrible piece of software that lets me multi-stream. It should be an add clues. That's really what that task is about. So other things I've got to do. The reason I'm doing this 2-stage process and like creating a spreadsheet and then putting it on Trello is this gets quite daunting with how much stuff it has on. And then what I can do is I can make a Trello task that is like new pixel art assets, and then it has these things as a list, right? And then that can be like a day's worth of work. Whereas if I put each of these things individually on Trello, then it becomes a pain in the butt. So having this backlog allows me to have much more granular sense of what I need to do. And then I can have these like tasks that are ideation tasks, like work this out and stuff, which is more of just like a sitting down and thinking type task. And I need to have it, but it's not really that appropriate for a Trello because it doesn't have a concrete output. Yeah, I don't really believe in vision. No, I do. But you have to work. The vision should be broad strokes, and then as you're working through the project, you work out what needs to change about it as you go. And other people could be very, very helpful for that. I mean, there have been various times in this stream where someone has suggested something that is like just not really appropriate for the game, and that's just part of getting suggestions from people that are well-meaning but don't fit what you're doing is just a normal part of just the price you pay for doing something in a community context, you know. But also, you know, being precious about things before you've shared them is also there can be a bit of a delusion in that. It's like the people that you meet that are worried that everyone's going to steal their ideas. It's like everyone who can actually execute an idea has a million of their own ideas and isn't interested in stealing someone's ideas, right? So the kind of problems you imagine you're going to have happen are things you will just learn to deal with as you're dealing with them. But being worried that people will suggest things you don't want to do is like a luxury problem when the first thing is just being interesting enough that people want to watch the stream in the first place, you know. Right, this is coming back to what we were talking about playtesting earlier. It's like you're not doing playtesting so that people can tell you what they think you should do with the game. You're doing playtesting to check something about the game, like people's understanding of it, you know, seeing what they enjoy. You're not doing it to like solicit their game ideas. And that's the same with streaming. You know, that's why we spend so much time in the stream like this talking. I'll think out loud, right? Because it's helpful for me to do. It's helpful for me to think out loud because it helps me to rationalize what I'm doing. And then that's maybe interesting to some other people. But I'm not doing it to show the game so that other people can tell me how I should approach it. And that's one of the reasons why we spend so much time with the stream not talking about the game or talking about other things, because the stream isn't for necessarily, people haven't shown up to the stream to be like, hey, I'm going to tell this person how to make their game. That happens a little bit as we go along, but people were here because they want to talk about game dev or hang out, you know? And exactly like someone asked earlier about Devlogs, if you want to do any of these things, you just need to start doing them earlier than you think, because there will be a learning curve to the technology, there'll be a learning curve to, you know, talking to people, all of those sorts of things. I have never been like an online gamer, really. So making the transition to streaming has been quite unusual for me, because like doing stuff and talking through doing it at the same time is not really a thing that comes naturally to me. So there's all sorts of weird learning that you just might not think is learning, but when you start doing the thing. So always going to be best to start out a bit earlier than you think. I need to do these in Procreate. I also need to some pop-up stuff. And the other spreadsheet I've got on the go at the moment is, let me find it. This is the room design one that we start. I think I was looking at this last time we were in the thing. So one of the things that someone identified in the stream last time that really helped me out was that we had like rooms called the castle and the dungeon, but it was more like castle as a biome and the grey rooms are like the castle biome. So This as I sort of come to redesign the rooms, which I'm going to start doing in the next couple of weeks, there's going to be this kind of question of how do, like, what I really want to achieve is for, if you were to just build all of the grey rooms together, you end up with something that looks almost like a coherent castle, like a Castlevania level, right? And I'm not really totally sure on what the items in that should, what the rooms should be called and what they should be, but I know that generally speaking they need to be bigger. I'm thinking of still keeping towers as dead ends, but making them much bigger rooms that have an internal jump puzzle, because like I said during the playtest, the armory where you just run in, pick the bombs up, go out is not as interesting as like a room where you need to jump up to get the bombs and stuff like that. So I'm going to be like rebuilding a lot of this. These ticked ones are kind of okay, but they could be better. And then the red rooms are difficult because they're supposed to be like other places that have been corrupted, right? And I've called them Badlands here. I'm going to call them Corruption for now. Because Badlands sort of suggests a desert, and that's not what we're talking about. So maybe they should be things like, you know, they're an existing place like a part of a castle or a town, but they've got all the fungus growing inside them. Still not sure. And then the gold rooms will be redesigned so that they have domes and are bigger rooms and have an internal jump puzzle. Oh, and I need to record this here while I've got the idea. So research lab gives you 3 specific plants to find. Gives you crystals when you find them. Maybe that should be a biology lab. And then the blue rooms, which we didn't actually get to unlock in that run, although I can quickly unlock them now so that we can have a quick look at them. They're all still quite small and underwhelming. So there's like a big chunk of level design I need to do to make the actual rooms more interesting. And then some of the new objects I need to put into the game world will come out of that, because a lot of these things have a specific object type associated with them. Like you do the mine to spawn ore, sapling to spawn fruit, the landfill's trash bags, the carnival has the gift object, the gift boxes. Yeah, all of that kind of stuff. And I think to make sure that the other rooms are interesting, I'm probably going to need to come up with a room, come up with an object that only exists in that room, or doesn't only exist in that room, but that room is the only reliable way of getting that object. And that's one of the things that I'll be coming back to in the next couple of weeks, as well as I go back into the project. I'll be like redesigning the rooms, but I want to make sure that. And maybe a goal of having no filler is not realistic. Maybe some of them need to be filler. But I really like the idea that each of these rooms has, if not a unique resource, then something unusual about how you need to approach it. Like, for example, I think the crossing is a good example of a room that doesn't have a unique resource in it, right? It has a relic down there and a relic down there, and it has the normal grey room stuff. Like it can have a fairy altar in, it can have jars in, it can have furniture in, and it can have torches in. But there's no like thing that's unique to the crossing. But the layout of it does create this little puzzle where in order to get those relics we need to build down there. And then I built a wall over the relic, so now I would need to get a bomb if I want to get that relic, or like kind of locked it in. So maybe every room having a unique object or resource is just not realistic at all, but I think it's maybe a good starting point for redesigning some of this stuff to make it more interesting. And I think the red rooms need to just all be some sort of slightly harder platforming puzzle, because the point of the red rooms is you're you're introducing a risk, you're making the level harder to get through, you're adding monsters, you know. The red rooms are the only rooms that actually have monsters, so you can do a kind of cozy run where you don't spawn any monsters. The grey rooms have traps, and the jars in the grey rooms can have ghosts in them, but generally speaking, red rooms are the only things where you're adding an immediate threat by opening the door, you know? So what I want to do here is... we get the satellite. We take the satellite back. I've already broken the level. I've already broken it! Okay. There we go. Okay. So with the once we brought the satellite back to the base, you get these other rooms where you can unlock you can unlock the other kind of blue rooms. And again, these at the moment are not particularly exciting rooms. We've got the auto market, we've got the museum. So I've added those to the deck now. So when I do a new run, I'll have the starting deck, but we'll also have those two blue rooms that I purchased before the run. And I think that's an interesting thing about the meta progression we've got planned for this, because there are some things where it's like, okay, you permanently unlock the ability to get blue rooms now, but you don't permanently change the deck so that it always has that blue room in. You have to decide to have it at the beginning of your run and use some of your resources on it. I think that's interesting because it means that we have like a never-ending economy sink for those crystals, right? Because the things we're spending them on later on don't last. They only last for a run. That kind of ups the stakes a bit because it's like you're putting them down at the beginning of the run as a wager. Okay, so we've got the auto market, and then you can throw objects in there and they turn into money and fly out the other side, but it basically only accepts food items. I built it in the worst place. But even here, I'm sort of imagining the blue rooms being parts of like either a spaceship or a cyberpunk city. So I think making them as big squares might be good, but the size of that one still feels kind of underwhelming. But yeah, the way it works is it spits the coins out that side, and then you have to get through by building into it from the other side, right? Which creates a little... I like the thinking behind that, because there's like a puzzle there now, and it doesn't just immediately make the game easier to have that thing. You have to still do something to use it, but it might be a little bit over the top in terms of how punishing it is. I can get back up there, yeah. I don't know what I did then. Fix auto market. I need to... What's the story of how the player can build these rooms? Okay, I will... I'm gonna wrap the stream up in 10 minutes, but I will tell you about that as I load the game back up. So it doesn't really exist in the game yet. It will be something you pick up from the dialogue between runs eventually, once we've got that system in place. But there is a sort of backstory behind it that will eventually be in the game. So the idea is, what do I do if this game makes me way more money than YouTube? I'll carry on doing both things, because I like doing both things. Yeah, I don't think this game will make me more money than YouTube. I think it's a very strange game that has going to have quite a niche audience. And unless I make the onboarding really, really good and make the first hours of the game very easy so people don't get frustrated with how hard it is, this is going to have like a 70% approval rating on Steam at maximum because it's so weird. And I've sort of made peace with that already because it wasn't designed, it was designed around exploring an idea, or a set of ideas I found interesting rather than deliberately trying to make something that would please the largest amount of people. So what's going on in terms of the lore here, which ties into, and like the way that this happened was I had a set of visual things I was interested in and thematic things I was interested in, and then I had a set of game mechanics, and then the lore has gradually sort of developed out of that. But the idea is we've got this wizard, right? This castle is floating in a big dark void at the end of the universe. So it's at the end of time, and most things don't exist anymore. But the wizard has invented this machine, and at the moment it's just a teleporter, which doesn't really make much sense. But the wizard has invented a machine, and it allows you to spend these magical keys, right, to rebuild little pockets of reality from all of time and space. And what we start off with is this kind of fantasy stuff like castles and like fairy tale foresty type stuff. And then as the game progresses, you get the futuristic stuff. And because we're doing like, it's fantasy but also post-apocalyptic at the same time, you get that big different set of things you can combine together. But most people, when they start it, they'll just be like, oh, it's like a kind of cute dark fantasy thing. But there is some sort of like modern or post-apocalyptic stuff thrown in there eventually. But yeah, what is happening is you have some sort of machine or device, and it allows these magical keys to sort of determine what's in the next door and kind of create it. And that is also why when you finish the level and you go back to the machine, rather than you just sort of teleporting home and this world stays here, is why we have this visual effect as well of like everything explodes. I might want to change that so all the gold doesn't fall out when you blow up the level at the end, but I put that VFX in so early because I was just trying to, you know, sell the idea that the level that you've built has been destroyed when you leave it, because you're going back to the castle and the castle is like one of the only things that exists because we're at the end of time kind of thing. So that's my incoherent lore rambling, but there is, you know, the specifics of that will get worked out more as the dialogue gets written later on once we've got the stuff in place for that. But that's the general gist of it, you know. Evil, greedy wizard at the end of time, immortal, has a little golem to do his bidding, gives the golem access to his small pocket universe generating machine and says, go and find me treasure and snacks, as a evil wizard is wont to do. And that's kind of how it all fits together. But yeah, generally speaking, that's not like something you're gonna like be told explicitly at the start of the game. It will just be drip fed to you through the characters in terms of what they know and understand. You know, I'm not gonna be like explaining any of that up front. It's just like, hey, this is how the game mechanics work, and then characters will occasionally mention things that maybe help to explain why that is in the world if you kind of pay attention to it, but it won't be like something front of mind. Because you know, I think the narrative design approach I like really is tell the player what to do so that they can have fun, and then make the way that the world works into a sort of puzzle in its own right that you have to mentally piece together over time, which fits very well with a run-based game, because it's like, you know, Blueprints does this with its narrative design, Hades does this with its narrative design, where you can just gradually piece together what's going on, and the fact that it's run-based helps with that because you're going past the same thing over and over again or whatever. Yeah, and like, don't be too explicit about the narrative, and most of it will be kind of character driven, of like people in the castle telling you that they hate their jobs and stuff like that, and then maybe you learn tidbits about what's going on with this universe through that. But not going, oh, you know, like the player will understand what their goal is, because it's very much just like get treasure, serve your boss, and the rest will kind of come out as it goes along. And the other benefit of doing things that way is it doesn't assume that someone that's just started playing your game cares about that stuff, which I think in an action game as well, like, I don't know, my preference is I just want to get on with the gameplay, and then if I've enjoyed the gameplay for a little while, then I might be convinced to care about the story. So that's the way round I would always put it in terms of like how players encounter those things. I know that we need like a narrative reason for the character to be doing things and for the player to care about what they're doing in terms of like understanding what kind of hero they're playing as and stuff like that. But I think that can be very, very light. And it can be as simple as I mentioned earlier, putting a chef hat on the character so that we understand that he's got a job and that his job is to like bring people food at the start of the game. You know, that's the sort of thing where that's not something you would think of as like narrative or narrative design, but putting someone in a costume totally is, right? Because it's part of theatre. So, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's partly based on Blueprints as much as it can be, in the sense that room drafting is the thing that Blueprints does in a video game. But Blueprints is also based off of, board games like Mad King Ludwig and stuff like that. So it is, but I mean, if you take one type of game and you change it from being a first-person 3D game into a platformer, it's going to immediately be a different sort of game, right? Yeah, Wizard only makes one golem at a time. Well, I think one of the running jokes is going to be that he thinks that they're all different golems. And obviously, as a player, you just perceive the character as the same character. So you have a memory of everything that's happened, but the wizard assumes that you're a different golem each time and you don't have any kind of memories between runs. Right, I'm gonna clock off, folks, because I've got some other stuff to do this afternoon. Thank you all for joining today. Go and follow the game on the itch account if you want to. And if you've tried to play it and it's slow, apologies. We will do more optimizations at some point. But, you know, at this stage, we're still just kind of getting... When we put the alpha out in December, the helpful thing really was finding between 5 and 10 people who really understood the fun of the game and were the right sort of person for it. And we got loads of feedback, and some of it was from people who maybe wouldn't normally play this type of game. So some of that feedback was helpful. But the most helpful feedback was the feedback that came from, like, sorry, I can't remember who it is now or if you're in the chat, but there was one person in the Dirt World Discord who was like posting screenshots where they'd got 6,000 coins in a run, right? And then to me, that kind of that person then is like their feedback becomes more important because they're the sickos that will really, really like this sort of game. And obviously, you need to listen to both groups for different reasons, because the people that are more casual fans of your game are going to give you insights into how you could make the game have a wider audience, because they're the people who, if you change it for them, it's going to be more accessible for more people. But then you also have the hardcore people where it's like, they're the people that if you listen to them, you're going to make the game deeper and you're going to make the game even more appealing to like its core audience. So you do have to listen to both groups of people to some degree. But the goal of the playtest wasn't necessarily allowing as many people as possible to play the game. So it's unfortunate that some people couldn't because of performance issues, but it's also just not something that's important at alpha stage, I wouldn't think. So we will deal with it more in time. See you all soon. I'm going to just throw over to my waiting screen before I log off, because otherwise people tell me it cuts off the end of the VOD. So have a good rest of the week. I will be back tomorrow. We're going to do... What have we got scheduled this week? I've got loads scheduled this week. Rest of the week, playing other people's games. So tomorrow we're checking out Cracks Where the Light Gets In, which is a very interesting looking puzzle game that I started playing on one of the community streams and then thought I want to give this longer. The community playtesting on Wednesday, that's for anyone who supports the channel on Patreon. I will be checking out your games. I'm just having a quick look to see how many we've got submitted over here. Not loads at the moment. And as always, if there's a game we haven't seen from a new community member or whatever, I put that to the top of the list. And anything that we've seen recently goes to the bottom of the list. And in the middle will be stuff that maybe we've seen before, but just not that recently. And yeah, and then Thursday we're looking at 3 different puzzle games that have been sent in. If you're not a supporter on Patreon and you still want to get a game on a stream and have it playtested, the form to do so is on indiegameclinic.com, where you can go to here, Indies Under the Knife. Send us your game here, that one. But there are a lot of games in that queue. There's always about 200 games in that queue. Doesn't seem to matter how fast I get through them, that we kind of always end up with 200 games in waiting. So the faster way is to join the community. Obviously, not everyone can afford that. But the good news is if you submit games to Indies Under the Knife, I don't do them on a first come, first serve basis. Every month I go through the list, I pick out some themes, I go, oh, here's, like in December, I picked out 16 games that were all on itch, and we just played loads of itch browser games in very quick succession. Sometimes games will just have a keyword where it's like, oh, here's 5 tower defense games, let's do all of those together, that kind of thing. So tips for getting to the front of that queue if you want to send a game for Indies Under the Knife are probably just have a very good description of what your game is so that it can be keyword searched. And this is probably going to apply to sending your game to anything, is people have systems for filtering content, and I have 200 games to look at. So I'm going to be using keywords. I will be clicking on the link and having a quick look at the game sometimes. And that means that one of the big barriers that people have to getting on that stream is that sometimes people have an itch page with no screenshots, and you have to download the game to even see what the game is. That's not good, right? Because that doesn't allow me to make that initial decision about should I stream this game, because I can't see anything about the game without actually downloading it and opening it, right? So that's just general advice for engaging with content creators, is make people's lives easier, and you're more likely to get picked. And yeah. Have a good week off, KP, whatever you're doing. No, but by keywords, I just mean when you describe the game, make sure that whatever genre of game it is in that description, because I will use Control and F on my spreadsheet. Your game description should never be lore. I'm a game designer. I'm not interested in the lore of your game. Never describe your game based on the lore. The only time that's ever appropriate is if it's an interactive fiction, and even then I still would want to know what I'm doing as a player in that game and not what the player character's background is or whatever. So if someone asks you to describe your game in 3 sentences, make sure at least one of those sentences is focused on what the player is actually doing and the game mechanics, rather than just the backstory of the game, because that's not what the information people use to decide whether or not to play a game, because playing a game is an activity and not just reading a story. So have a good rest of the week, folks. If I don't see you before then, I'm just going to switch over to this before I end the stream so that we don't get cut off on the VOD.